What is going on, everybody? BobbyFi here. Not sure whether or not Sheets is going to show up. He said earlier today he'd be here, but he's got a lot of family stuff going on. So got to send out the love to Sheets. And if he's here, I suggest we just talk about sports because I think he could use the distraction. Anyway, guys, I appreciate the outpouring for Sheets. He's a great guy, and it's just sad to see some tough family stuff going on. Anyway, we're going to get on to today's slates, both MLB and NBA. And I'll just start off with what I'm doing. My biggest builds, I've spread out a little bit. Like I think I'm about 25% Dodger stacks, but it's actually higher because I have like other three-man some places. But I do have them currently my biggest DraftKings build. I also am getting to a lot of mini red stacks where I'm not playing Snell. I do have 35% Snell, but I also have about 30% of my mini stacks committed to red. So I actually, and that's, I feel like the way you play the situation, although I probably will end up with less Snell than that even. I don't have any Snell on FanDuel, trying to stay away from that. The quality start and win obviously mean a lot. He's got a good shot for the win. Hasn't pitched more than 5 innings in a game this season. Can't seem to get out of those quick innings. If he gets a couple quick innings tonight, which he might against this kind of team, you might make a lot of sense. But it's just a little bit weird right now to know what to do with this Snell stuff. The general thing is I don't have him in my big buy-ins except for 250. The guys I am rolling with the most, and we're gonna have to get a closer weather update. Again, we are not yet a weather site, but I'll tell you exactly what I'm doing with those games. As of right now, I have Mackenzie Gore as my SP2, as my most used SP2 on DraftKings. I also like Smiley in that game, but the main thing is I have a ton of Garcia, and I actually like Herman a little bit on FanDuel. He's a little bit cheaper. He's a pivot off of Snell, and he tends to go the 6 innings that we never get out of Snell pretty much every time out there. It's also, Cleveland's been struggling. They don't strike out a ton, but maybe he can make up for that because he's a pretty decent strikeout rate.
Sheetbot said true DFS NBA projections have been updated. They should be available on SaberSim in a few minutes. Sheetbot said true DFS MLB projections have been updated.
Sorry about that. Anyway, but getting back to it, so the pitchers, I've got 65% Garcia on DraftKings. As I mentioned, I have 39% currently of Snell and 40% currently of Gore. I'm probably going to end up with less Snell. I have 15% Barrios. I actually think I might be higher than that by the end of the day. It might be where my pivot off of Snell is. And I have 25% Herman on DraftKings, but 50% Herman on FanDuel. I have 25% of Smiley and 10% of Gonsolin. I actually don't mind the Gonsolin play that much, but to see the ownership even being somewhat substantial is a little bit like, okay, it doesn't feel quite like the time yet, especially against Philly. It's a tough team to get through with the pitch count. Like, it's going to be even tougher tonight because I expect to see, I don't know, actually. I want to see what the Phillies lineup ends up being because I've heard rumors of certain people returning. So we'll see what happens with that. Anyway, just going position by position on DraftKings, sort of what I'm highest on. Trevino and Yankees stacks. I do have some Yankees stacks that I forgot to mention. I do have some Astros stacks. Maldonado, I have in those. As a one-off, Ruiz, Will Smith, and Tyler Stevenson are all very high for me, and I like Will Smith obviously in the stacks as well. Second base is I think where I'm spending down in a lot of spots on DraftKings. Peraza on your Yankee stacks, Torres and your better Yankee stacks, I guess. India, I have a lot of, and I have Luis Garcia as a very viable one-off here. Third base, Muncie's my highest owned, followed by Machado and Bregman. I am playing a ton of Chapman on FanDuel, specifically because he's going to be much lower owned over there, and I would rather play him where he's going to be lower owned. Pretty straightforward. But Muncie, Bregman, Machado, then Chapman, then Wisdom are my third baseman on DraftKings with a little bit of steer. Anthony Volpe at shortstop. I like that a lot. Like the price, like the spot. Feel very high on him. Jeremy Pena and Houston stacks, or even removed, is fine. I have Barrero in a one full red stack. It's just a saver thing. I actually think I'm going to change that right now to Kevin Newman, who I prefer. and he's only 200 more, and I have to make an adjustment if I'm going to do that. So gonna have to figure out what that adjustment's going to be. Maybe it's going to another Barrios instead of another Herman or something, or maybe probably not going to be the other Snell because I'm obviously using the other team in that game. So probably not going to be that. All right, let's and pop in questions anytime you want to. I'm still trying to get my bearings here. I thought I'd have my sidekick with me. Let's see. Give me 1 second here, guys. All right. Other positions. Let's go to. Did I go through? First base: Freddie Freeman, Vlad Guerrero, Steer, Meneses a little bit, Abreu. Those are my main ones. The outfield, Mookie Betts is my highest owned, but I actually have him at short I have him at short and in the outfield today. I know it's better to play him at short in general because there's more value in the outfield. I don't feel today quite as strongly about the value. I do like guys like, I'll take a shot on Calhoun betting fifth at 2,400. The Cincinnati guys, as I mentioned before. I like James Outman a lot. I like, pieces, but I don't want to fully stack the Blue Jays because they're just too popular. But I have a lot of Varsho anyway. A lot of Kyle Tucker, a lot of Jordan Alvarez, Corey Julks, Stuart Fairchild, Yoshida, Thomas, Suzuki are basically my entire outfield pool. Yeah, I agree with you, Rich. It is a kind of a do you day. So I do think this is a day that you can speak to maybe getting more different. It's a big slate where it's funny because you think there'd be condensed, and there is in Toronto. There will definitely be the chalk, but and I think San Diego will be up there as well. But I do think that you can find ways around things that are popular in every stack except for Toronto on DraftKings. On FanDuel, I do think you can get different with Toronto stacks by playing Belt or Jansen with Vlad and using Chapman. That's the way that I would get different with the Toronto stack on FanDuel. That, and I would play the Reds, which is, for those of you guys who saw my early builds, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. And I do think those early builds can be very valuable, so I hope you guys take a look. BBF is saying, I know the Yankees are missing Judge and Stanton, but I still can't believe how bad this is. I know, it's kind of shocking. Yeah, I agree. I mean, partly Rizzo hasn't been right this year. They do have Volpe now, who I like. I believe in for better or worse. I mean, it's gonna, he's still not a star yet, but Glaber's been hitting the ball better, and it just sinks off. The one thing I remind people though is guys like Willie Calhoun. This guy was a hitter a few years ago. He could bounce back to some old form if they get the hitting coaches working with him right. But it is a pretty ugly lineup, no question about it. I'm certainly not going to argue it with you. It does look a little suspect to say the least. As far as NBA goes tonight, let me jump over there. I posted my bets, and guys, check out bettertakes.com. I'm going to drop the link in here. I do post. I have my premium content, and it's part of my premium content on TrueDFS, but it's very small part because it's the sports betting part. I post them on Better Takes. Better Takes has helped me become a much better sports bettor. Takes all your historical analysis and tells you exactly what your score is for those expected games and what your expected results are. It's a pretty incredible tool that I suggest everybody who ever bets on sports uses. You also can upload all your stuff. So, but I did want to give say, hey, look, check out the Discord, which I just posted in chat, and think about downloading and signing up for this while it's still free. Lucky to get in early on this one. Anyway, moving on to the NBA tonight, unless there's any other MLB questions, because it is kind of it's a 6-game slate with the really, as Rich B says, it is a do you kind of slate. The funny thing about the NBA tonight is usually when you get down to 2 games, you get guys who are going to be 80, 90% owned. I don't know if anybody's going to be 80, 90% owned tonight. I will tell you that I'm sided more with Maxey. I'm going to side with Philadelphia here. I'm going to play the probably 4 from Philly. I mean, Maxey, Harris, Embiid, Melton in that order are my favorites. And I like the idea of running it back with either Jalen or Jason Tatum. I personally am more on Jalen. Partly it's a price thing, and I really could see it going either way. But I do have a good amount of Jalen. I also think the guards are way too cheap for Boston, so you play Jalen with one of the guards for Philly. That's sort of your core, for at least my core. The Phoenix that'll be a little bit lower owned guys, maybe taking a shot on value like Torrey Craig or Josh Okogie, who actually will have some ownership. I think that's reasonable to take a shot there. I also think it's reasonable to expect maybe Biombo plays more minutes tonight or Jock Londale. I don't think I would bet on them in DFS, but just keep an eye out on this. I think you're going to see them give different looks to Denver. And I also think there's going to be some foul trouble games from Ayton in this series. Good luck to my man, Brandon. Good to see you, man. Good to see Diggs in here. Good to see everybody. Please hit the like button if you haven't. The Denver side of things, I don't remember Aaron Gordon projecting this well like ever. And it's probably, it's fine. I don't think you need to play Aaron Gordon. I don't think it's a bad play. I just think it's really high ownership, and I was a little bit surprised exactly how high it was. I do think you're going to see spread out ownership between, so there'll be some Murray lineups, and there's going to be some Jokic lineups. Murray should be more owned probably, but I mean, sure, there's nothing wrong with playing Jokic. I kind of prefer the idea of hoping and stacking and hoping Philly stays close in the first game. But the other route is pretending like that game's a blowout and trying to treat this as your main game stack, in which case you can actually play both of them. Super large field play would be Christian Braun. Absolutely not going to do it in any priority lineups of any kind. He and Jeff Green are two guys who I would keep in your pool if I was playing 150. I do really like Bruce Brown here. I think they'll use him a lot in this series. And I think one of Brown or KCP is a pretty good bet to have a decent game here. And I like Brown a little bit better than I like KCP as usual. But KCP at lower ownership could always have that hot game, and I think he's a good mix-in. It is going to be hard to get off the board unless you maybe you get the good Torrey Craig game off the bench, or maybe he starts even. It's up in the air, but they seem to do different things. Maybe on the Boston side of things, maybe you play some Robert Williams and Marcus Smart, who will be the lowest owned of the guards. Marcus Smart will be the lowest owned of the guards, and he's been over 35, I believe, in all but one playoff game. Just keep that in mind. It should show up big for the series. Obviously going to need him on defense. And I'm ending up siding a little bit with the Paul Reed thing. I don't know if they're good. They may consider going with Tucker and McDaniels. McDaniels is the other one. He's getting a little, it's sort of spread out when you see the ownership. I don't know where it's really going to end up at, but he's the other he could end up actually playing small ball 5 for them if they decide to go 5 out. And I think that's actually possible. And PJ Tucker is the other one. So there is a chance those guys steal Reed's minutes, or even George Niang, who can always get a little bit hot. So those are your get weird plays to me. And I think you try to incorporate one of a PJ Tucker, a Jalen McDaniels, or a Niang, or a Craig, or a Biombo. And that's going to differentiate you enough to be at least a little bit off the board. I said Biombo, but I meant Okogie. And even Biombo, I do think is actually bizarrely in play. I also like the idea of a very, very low-owned KCP, and I'm actually going to make a little note to myself and get KCP into one of my – I've got the same builds in a couple of my lineups here, and basically KCP is I have Bruce Brown in the utility, but there's no reason I can't use KCP there as a pivot in a couple lineups to get a little bit off the board, not way more. Like I said, I'm stacking more of the first game. I have no problem with what anybody else wants to do. That's just what I'm doing. I would love to hear if anybody else has any thoughts or questions or takes on how these games go and what they're doing tonight. I think everyone's expecting Boston to kill Philly. I, unlike other people, have more belief in Philly. And also, I think them playing without Embiid actually raises the ceiling for how fast they play. It really depends on Harden and what kind of mood he's in. Because Maxey and Melton, they fly when those guys are handling the ball a lot more. And Embiid and Harden are two of the slowest players in the NBA. Yes, the Sam just there's the other get weird play. Christian Braun off the bench. It's super weird, but I mean there is a possibility of a range of outcomes of things to happen where he could get some extended run. I don't think he gets more than 16 or 18 minutes, but he could possibly get there in that time. And that's even probably a reach. But I have him ranked behind the Jalen McDaniels. The problem is McDaniels is going to have a little bit of ownership. But I think McDaniels and PJ Tucker are both kind of interesting tonight. And obviously, it would be nice to have an official Philly starting lineup. And this whole conversation, we might get the late, oh, by the way, Embiid's in tonight, news. And we're going, what the hell? I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm just throwing it out there. But I sort of am finding myself maybe I should be thinking more. This is the kind of there are very few slates where you want to play PJ Tucker. This might be the kind of slate you do want to play PJ Tucker. He's tough. He brings it. He can play a potential small ball 5, or alongside of either McDaniels or Yang off the bench, and even with Harris out there, it's not like Horford is going to beat you up in the post. And while you're going to lose out on some rebounds to guys like Robert Williams, you do have a couple of really good rebounding guards, along with Harris, who's been a really good rebounder with Embiid out this season. So just throwing that out there. Anyway, that's sort of my whole basketball rundown. What's up to my man Nick in chat? That's what I got for tonight as far as the NBA goes. I'm happy to talk more MLB or NBA if anybody has any questions or thoughts. But as of right now, I think that's pretty much all I'm doing and all I can recommend, because that's where I'm at. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. All right. It looks like everything's drying up. Hope everything's going well with Sheets right now. And hope you guys all do well tonight. I will be in Discord for premium all night long. Let me know if you need any help with anything, any thoughts, any questions, anything. It looks like Springer was scratched, which I appreciate from Sharks, because I do have some George Springer lineups. So that's another one. Let me just make sure that the Springers, let me just see who they are playing instead of Springer. I still like the Blue Jays, by the way. And can you get anybody at lower ownership? You got Biggio back in the lineup. I had to get rid of all my early Biggio builds. Now I have to go back to it. Yeah. Well, I don't think it's going to make them any less owned. Looking at it right now. And it just feels like the kind of matchup where every now and then Kluber will squeak by in a matchup where I don't think he can, but I just feel like the team feels like a tough spot for him. I mean, I don't know. As of right now, I think the starting lineup is, we should assume Paul Reed will start, but we don't need to speculate because we'll know before lock. So whatever happens, you can adjust before lock, but I'm assuming it's going to be Harden, Maxey, Harris, Tucker, Reed with Melton off the bench. There is a chance they start Melton and bring Reed off the bench. I'm not sure what they're going to do yet, but that's where I'm at. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, Mark. Yeah, definitely. Golf will be fun this week. And bless Sheets' family, and hope everything's going well there. Sorry, it's a little distracting today because it's someone you love and you care about, and it sort of makes everything into perspective a little bit. Anyway, back to sports. I know Sheets wouldn't want us talking too much anyway about it. So, yeah, Melton is going to be like the most popular player on the slate. And I think there is a bust path for him, just for what it's worth. I do like Melton. I am playing him in my lineups right now. But is there a chance that maybe he gets in foul trouble? Maybe Jalen McDaniels is playing well at the small ball. Maybe there's another route. And maybe he's just on the court and he doesn't do anything, which we've seen plenty of times from him. I do love him, but I certainly understand if people want to take the other approach and go for the fade. Yeah, and one thing is PJ Tucker, we make fun of him all the time because he's not a fantasy producer. He's still a basketball player they want on the court because he's tough and he can match up with everybody. He also in the playoffs, he's averaging 19 fantasy points per game in the playoffs so far. Man, I'll take 19 fantasy points right now from 3,700. Why not? Why not 19? Why not play both he and Melton? I really think it makes sense. Yeah, Jamal Murray, but that's just talking about another chalk play. That's the problem. I mean, these are the mega chalk plays, so it's not like we're getting anything different by playing Jamal Murray. I personally am not playing him, but it's no reason that I think he can't go off or anything. I do think it's a potential spot where maybe you see more of the other guys and less of him tonight. At least I've taken that approach because of the ownership. It's a little bit hard for me to want to play him at 45, 50%, even though I believe he is too cheap. I agree with that. You're definitely playing him in cash. I don't see the path that they're going to need. Even without Embiid the last game, you had 4 minutes against Brooklyn. And again, it's not like you need to match up with bigs, but could it happen? I think Harrell is a guy you could use. I wouldn't put him in a single entry, but I would play him in the 150, you know what I mean? And hope it's the right day. Yeah, I think doing that's okay. Yeah, that's very true, Mark. Absolutely. Yeah, Murray is like one of the shockiest guys on the slate. I prefer Bruce Brown over KCP, which I talked about earlier, but I do like KCP at the fact that he's going to be, less than half his owned. So I have both of them in separate places, but I do think that they're both totally solid plays. I think Brown is the better play in general. I think KCP is the more tournament-y play, which is weird because he's sort of a cash gamey type of scorer. He doesn't like more than 5x very often. Not that Bruce Brown does, but at least we've seen it. You know what I mean? And KCP has to really get hot. Brown can go out there and have a weird like 4 steal, 2 block game. You know what I mean? He has those nights where he does that. He's also been ridiculously consistent going back to the end of the regular season into the playoffs, and 20 plus fantasy points at 4,400 this time of year is just feels good. Yeah, I think the GPP is the thing. Jokic or KD? If that question ever comes up as a real question, I mean, first of all, they're totally different prices, obviously different positions. But Jokic is the answer 100 times out of 100. The question is, do you want to get lower ownership and play KD? That's something that I'd be open to, but I don't think the ownership is going to be very different between them tonight. But it's a big price gap. So I guess it just depends on how you're building. I'm not playing either of them at the moment, but I don't mind KD. If I played anybody I played either of the big spend ups from Phoenix, I would play Booker over KD. I think it's much more Booker's team than it is KD's team, but KD can obviously always light fire. I just think if you're talking about guys more likely to score 75, I think that it's Booker, and Durant is probably good in that 50 range, most of the time. All right, fellas. Well, good luck to everybody tonight, ladies and gents. Hope that everybody has a good one, and let's make some money tonight.